let's do my favorite painting exercise again. Probably one of my favorite surprising painting exercises. I've already shown it in a couple of videos before, but you use a large sheet and you separate that out. Is that the way to say it? Anyway, you tape little rectangles, squares, whatever shape you want, to separate it into different sections, and then you paint over it like a maniac, or gentle if you want. You basically pretend that the tape isn't there, just as if it was one large piece. And after a little bit, once you've made a big mess, you take up the tape, cut up the large sheet into the smaller pieces, and then you can look at them individually and work on them a little bit more. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'll show you the whole process from start to finish. So I've started this in the same way that I've been really enjoying starting paintings lately, and that is by adding some soft pastel and then going over that with a transparent acrylic medium, which kind of washes all the marks out. And then once that's dry, I add some acrylic paint, and I'm also adding some acrylic paint pen here. I really love getting a lot of texture in these initial layers. That's why I try and experiment with lots of different mediums and lots of different textures as well. And I get different textures by not just using different mediums, but also different tools. Like here I'm using this catalyst wedge, which you could use something like a credit card or just anything that's got a straight edge. But I really like this catalyst wedge because it lays in your hand really nicely. So after I've worked on the whole sheet for a bit, I then cut up the individual pieces, and you can see I've actually left the masking tape on the edge because I want to paint a little bit more on them and now look more at the composition and maybe add a bit of color in a spot where it balances the rest of the painting. So here, for example, there was a lot of yellow at the top, so I'm adding yellow at the bottom. And here I just want to make this bottom part a little bit more colorful. So I'm adding some of that soft pastel and then smushing it again with the acrylic medium. So here I'm also adding some more pink. I really liked to lean into the pops of color here. So these actually ended up fairly colorful. You still have some of the neutral colors like the browns to balance out all that color, but I really liked to make these really fun because they're so small, and if they hang on your wall, for example, they still draw a lot of attention, even though they're only really tiny. If you're wondering how big they are about 8 centimeters wide by 16 centimeters tall. So they're almost like 2 squares. Well, they're exactly 2 squares stacked on top of each other. And here I wanted to just make the top half really calm because the bottom half is so busy with all these vertical marks. But I also wanted to bring a little bit of the blue at the top, just to balance out the colors. Here I'm just adding a little bit more calm by adding some of this light color over a few of the darker marks.
If you like this video, consider subscribing.
I really love how the blue scraped over most of this painting with the catalyst wedge. I just wanted to pronounce this little pink mark at the bottom a little bit more. Here again, I want to add a little bit more calm, and I'm doing that by adding a transparent layer of this pinky color. And I'm also adding a bit of brown just to make this one a little bit more neutral. I think the blue and the yellow and the fact that there's lots of these stripy marks really balances out nicely with the more neutral solid colors. So I'm really just concentrating on balancing out what's already there. I don't really want to change them. I just want to work with what happened in that spontaneous first session where I worked on the large piece, and then see how I can make all those marks and colors work in a smaller individual little painting. So again, I'm balancing out that solid pink in the top corner just by adding a little bit of the same or a similar color in some of the other areas of this painting. And here as well, I'm just adding a little bit more solid color. This has a lot of texture and I love that, but it needs a little bit of balance by something a little bit more solid. I'm still working fairly transparently because I do want to keep some of that texture, but just balancing all that, the energetic marks with a little bit more color. Here that white was just a little bit too stark, so I'm just adding a little glaze just to soften that harsh white of the background. This one, I really love all the colors. I love that there's this really almost acidic yellow and the more orangey yellow, that's much warmer, and then the pink, and then you've also got the bit bursts of this really vibrant blue. So that really needs balancing with this slightly more beigey neutral tone. This one's probably one of my favorites. I think it's the curvy lines that are so different from all the other marks. I'm also trying to make them all a little bit different from each other, so they're not all looking the same. So if I see that one of them looks quite similar to another one that I've already worked on, I'm trying to just make it a little bit different, maybe add a different color or add a different texture or leave more texture than I did in another one. And here, this just needed a touch of yellow to balance out the yellow at the bottom. And on this one, I just want to balance that neutral tone at the top, the kind of pinky, purpley color, by adding that to the bottom and then just softly transitioning it up into the blue. So it's very subtle. It always surprises me what the actual individual little pieces look like, because I do try not to think about the individual ones while I'm painting on the big sheet. There's some happy surprises and sometimes some not so nice surprises. And then I also really like looking at how I can make those pieces even better by adding stuff, taking stuff away. All these pieces are now available on my website. If you want to have a look, I'll leave the link down in the description box. And if you're new to painting, or especially this more intuitive way of painting, and you want to get started, I have a free guide, which is the No Pressure Path to Painting. And you can download that via the link in the description box. If you want to see me do that exercise on a much smaller scale in a sketchbook, then click the link to the video that I've linked in the description box as well. Thanks and bye bye.